Hello, Grandmasters. Mike from the WCA. Welcome to the Week 2 update. This is the 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock video. I'm going to take a look at a game really well played by one of our new students, Isaac, who joined us, who has black against Rohan in this position. I want to take you through the game, especially when we get to the point where you guys see this symmetry all the time, or the copycat position, which is actually the main line in the four knights opening that you're looking at here, right? A lot of times when you get these symmetrical positions, kids get confused because they think white just always has this natural advantage because they go first. It is true that they always have a little bit of an edge, but there's ways for black to mix it up, and Isaac actually did a really nice job of showing that. So Rohan castles, Isaac castles, and it's perfectly fine for both players to continue this way. D3, and here Isaac decides to break the symmetry by playing the break D5. Now, when you break first with black in any chess game, you always have to make sure that either you have enough pieces out or that your king is safe, because think about what a pawn break is. So let's go back for a minute. First of all, let's make sure everybody knows what a pawn break is. Basically, a pawn break happens, I hope you can see my mouse cursor, when two pawns are on the board that are bumping heads. So in this case, let me highlight the e-pawn for black, the e-pawn for white. Since the pawns are stuck or bumping heads, they can't move. A break is when you take one of your pawns and attack the enemy pawn from the side. So in this case, being that it was black's move, black decides to make the break d5. Now, he's perfectly fine to play this move, but again, why did I caution you about not breaking unless you have enough pieces out, or if your king is stuck in the middle? That's another thing to be concerned about. In this position, Isaac's king is castled. When you break, you are opening up the board. You're trying to get these pawns to trade, or maybe you want to trade or gain some more space. Well, if you don't have pieces out and you allow black to, say, put a pawn on d4, then this knight, if it were not developed, would not get into the game so easily. Can you guys see that? The other problem is, after you break and the lines open up, if your king is still sitting in the middle, you're asking for trouble. Now, most masters in this position play a pretty cool idea. They don't play d5. They actually will play d6. And when I say most masters, it just means it's one of the main lines. Masters also will play d5. But let me just show you one idea that you can play with black. And I'm actually going to turn the board around. Doesn't it look so different from this side? It's the same exact position, except I flipped it. If you're black, one of the annoying things that happens after the move d6 is this pin, bishop to g5. So I want to show you this little maneuver to actually break that pin. And it involves moving your queen here to e7, opening up the d8 square. And to do that, you're going to put the knight on d8 followed by knight to e6. And that maneuver, or that little knight move, is designed to bother this bishop here on g5. Now, in order to do that, it's important that you get control of this square, because if you don't and you just randomly move your queen in here, you always have to watch out for this knight hopping into d5 at some point. So what happens is black takes the knight first. White will take back, otherwise they're down a piece. Now they play queen e7. And one of the lines goes rook e1, putting the rook on this line. Why? They want to protect the e-pawn. For what reason? Can you figure out why they want this pawn protected? It looks like the pawn on d3 is already doing that. So why would a master move her rook to e1? Well, she wants to move this pawn. She wants to break in the center. Now there's two reasons why white wants to make this break. So what am I going to do? I'm going to flip the board. Now, after knight d8, if black continues with that plan, now you're playing white. White, by the way, can you see the pawn break? You see the two pawns bumping heads here? White wants to play d4. Can you guys figure out why? Why would white want to open up this game? Well, the reason is white has two bishops. So if that board can open, then perhaps white can make this bishop pair come into play and really do some nice work once it opens. Now it's funny, black looks like they got to white first. You want to guess what white's main move is here? It's kind of bizarre. I bet you don't find it. I bet you a nickel. Did you find it? Oh, only two of you? Okay, it cost me 10 cents. It's actually bishop to c1. It's been played a bunch of times. Doesn't it look so funny moving this bishop way back here to c1? It looks like you're taking it out of the game. Okay, let me treat you guys like masters. Let's put the bishop back. If you're white in this position, you kind of had your pawns broken down here when black took your knight. You see how you have two c-pawns? Well, in return for those pawns being doubled up, you were given the two bishops. When you have two bishops against two knights, like you do in this case, well, here you have two bishops and a knight, and black has two knights and a bishop. Well, it's in white's best interest to want to open this game up for the bishops. It's in black's to try to chase this dark squared bishop down and hopefully get it off the board. It would break this pin, and perhaps black gets a good game. White is going to say, wait a minute, I'm the only one with a dark squared bishop. So I'll give black a tempo. I'll give them a chance to get ahead of me, but I'm going to back this bishop up and bring it out later after the game opens. And hopefully, if I play the right way, I'm going to be able to use this bishop to put pressure on black's dark squares. Does that make sense to you guys? I hope so. Because I learned something too. I forgot about this maneuver. I haven't seen it in a while, but I thought it was a good time to start sharing it with you guys, because as you play these four knights positions, it's nice to know what to do after the opening takes place. So here's what I'm going to do. From the white side, from this position, I'm going to take you back to where Isaac played the break. So let's go to d3, and we're playing white again. Instead of the break d5, let's look at the more common d6, bishop g5, and if you have somebody with black make this trade on c3, there's an excellent chance that this kid is studying chess, because they're not randomly making that trade. They're making it so that they can play queen e7, and what is their idea? They want to hop this knight into d8, into e6, get rid of that bishop. That's what they're planning to do. Can you take their knight to prevent that? You certainly can. There's no reason that says you can't make that trade and take it away, but it totally changes the game. The pawn structure has become symmetrical again, and now the bishops that are left on the board are of opposite color. We'll get into that another time, but it really changes the game. So let's go back to this maneuver. A more common move is rook e1. Do you guys remember why white plays rook e1? I keep switching the sides on purpose. I want you to see the ideas regardless of what side you're on. Why is the rook here? To protect the e-pawn. Why does the e-pawn need protection if it's already protected by this pawn? That probably means white wants to push this pawn. Okay? Hope it makes sense. Why do they want to push the pawn again? Because they have two bishops. And with two bishops, they want the board open. So if you threaten to take one of my bishops off the board, unless I have a really good reason, I'm probably going to tuck it in and not let you trade for it. Okay, let's go back to the game. This is the position from the white side when Isaac breaks right away. And it's perfectly fine, again, to do this. The only problem is Rohan after making the trades, kind of gave Isaac a chance to wiggle out. He had a chance here to put a little bit more pressure on him, and let me show you how. After these trades in the center happened, so you see how these guys traded here? Okay, there's an opportunity back here after the break, and Rohan takes. I've had students who've seen games like this that go, wait a minute, after he breaks, I see a way to double up Isaac's pawns. And Rohan could have played, for example, here, bishop takes c6, and then take here, and now take this pawn in the center. And that looks really good, except for the fact that who has the two bishops now? Can you guys see that? And there's going to be a lot of play from the black side, especially since white does not have a light squared bishop. So I don't want to make it too complicated, but whenever black is the first one to break, like Isaac did, he always runs the risk of the game opening too quickly. Because think about this. Has Rohan made any mistakes with the white pieces? Absolutely not. Every move he played made sense. He put a pawn in the middle, another pawn in the middle. He developed his minor pieces, and he castled. So if you're going to play d5, perhaps you have to wait until you get some more pieces in the game, or play d5, but expect white to be able to fight with you step for step. Okay, in the game, e takes, knight takes, and these guys go in for a bunch of trades. And I like what Rohan does here. He doesn't trade off his light squared bishop. He kept it to attack the queen, and here Isaac put it on d6. And that's understandable. He didn't want to put it all the way back because that feels like a waste of time. You can probably see why he doesn't want it on d7. It's going to interfere with that. When he put it here, it's in this position that's very, very instructive for white. Rohan played c3, which is a very good move because it attacks the dark squared bishop, and really it's kind of running short of squares. He played bishop to c5, and here Rohan missed the chance to kind of push a little bit on the queen side of the board. You don't always have to play in the center. Remember, there are 3 different parts to the chessboard. You can play in the center, the king side, or the queen side. Sometimes you can play on 2 sides, sometimes all 3. Okay, here you can look at the move b4. Push a little bit on the queen side because that move comes with a tempo. If the bishop goes to b6, you play a4. What's your idea? You want to trap the bishop by coming here next, and black will very often play a move like a5 to stop that. But then you can play moves like this, b5. You're going to kick the knight. When the knight moves, let's see if you guys can figure out why we wanted these pawns moved on this side of the board. Did anybody find the move bishop to a3? And let me put a highlight on here. Can you see the 2 white bishops? Oops, not that line. Sorry, wrong one. How about this one? There we go. You see how those 2 white bishops are kind of raking across the board? And it appears in this position that Rohan started to push first. And that all happened because of Isaac's break on d5. Again, there's nothing wrong with the break, but Rohan missed the chance to play on a part of the board where there was action first for him. Bishop to c5, it's white's turn. Did Rohan play a bad move? No, he played rook e1, putting it on a half-open file. The only problem is it didn't put enough pressure on Isaac. If he plays b4, he kicks the bishop, b6, not really going anywhere else, a4 with a threat, a5 stops the threat, b5, gaining more space, kicking the knight, knight goes to e7, sounds good, and a move like bishop e3, putting the pressure on white's position. Just a little bit easier to play for white. Okay, watch what happens. Rook e1. Isaac plays an excellent move. He plays bishop to g4, but again, it doesn't stop white rather, from playing b4 and going into the same line that I just showed you. The only difference is there's a bishop here pinning this knight, but if you look carefully, it's really not easy for black to get on this knight again. Not so fast, because these pawns are pushing on this side of the board. Rohan makes a mistake here. He makes a mistake by moving his last minor piece into the game. Now, you might say, why is that a mistake? Well, the only reason we'll call it a mistake at your level is that the bishop isn't really doing more on d2 than it's doing back here on c1. You guys see that? He's not getting enough juice out of the lemon. Don't ask where that expression came from. If you're new to the WCA, you have no idea what it means. If you've been around, you'll know what I'm talking about. So Rohan, in the future, play moves that give you a little bit more bite. You play bishop to d2, you're not getting quite enough. I like Isaac's move. He plays the rook to e8, and again, you know, perhaps Rohan should be pushing here, but with this move, I sort of like the idea that he left this rook on f8, because I thought later, if given the opportunity, he may have moved his king over here to h8, followed by moving this pawn up the board. And you see how the rook supports that? Okay. So I kind of like this move too. And then Rohan here plays queen c2. And this is really the start of his trouble. It looked like he automatically connected his rooks. You see, let me put a little highlight. You see how the two white rooks are connected? So you guys have heard that from different chess classes and coaches, but you can't automatically connect your rooks. So by playing queen c2, Rohan got hit with bishop takes f3, which just opened him up. Queen gave a check. King went to h1, and Isaac picked off a pawn. Probably better in this position to play rook e2, and when the bishop runs away, you'll see that this rook can slide around, perhaps bother the queen. But Rohan missed it, and instead blundered here and played rook to g1. Now here, Isaac should immediately take it, but instead he played queen h5, attacking this pawn on f3. Now Rohan should probably just lift the rook up and deal with losing another pawn, but he played rook a to f1, and now he's just in big trouble because the rook took the the rook took back here, and then Isaac picks off another pawn, and at this point it's really too much material. The rook just lifted to g2, and then I like what he did a lot here. He played knight a5, which this bishop really doesn't have many good squares to go to. If you put it here, the pawns are going to chase it back to this square, so Rohan just pulls it back, and then Isaac trades it off. Rohan takes back, leaving him with two rooks against the rook and the bishop and a couple of pawns. So this is lost, but he still had to find a way to continue the attack, which he did with rook e6. And this is called a rook lift. The rook is coming up, the rook is coming over, and at this point the class was coming to an end, but white has a losing position here. So really nice game, very instructive from both sides. I hope you guys learned something from watching the game, and that little by little we're finding your own path of what to do at home in between your WCA classes. Okay, maybe you can watch this video in 2 parts. I'll put it in the blog. Okay guys, see you on Sunday.